All right, today we're going to be going through a carburetor and rebuilding a carburetor on a Honda CRF50 motorcycle. And I left the throttle cable on. Generally what you would do is pull the cap off separately. A lot of times the cap doesn't need cleaning or the needle. And the slide, you can a lot of times just spray that off where it is. But I wanted to show you how to disassemble the actual slide itself with the needle. So the cable is attached there. And then you just go ahead and unscrew this, and your slide and your needle and your spring are all going to come out together. I'm going to set the carb aside right now and show you how to do this. So next what I do is I will take the cable in this hand, and I'll take and pull that spring back and then pull it back as far as I can go, and I'll put my thumb right there. So that slide then is just kind of sitting there. Okay, next thing you do, push down on that cable, and that cable will slide right out. Now when you let that spring go, you're able to pull it off of there. You're also able to pull it out of that cap there. So now our cable is disconnected. I've showed you how to do that. Next thing you're going to do is you're going to have a spring down inside there that works as a holder. And we're going to take a small pair of needle nose pliers, and you can squeeze that together, but you don't want to squeeze really hard, but you can grab that spring, kind of a holder area right there where it's springy, and pull it out of there. And then going back together, you want to make sure you slide it into the groove there. But we're going to pull it out for now so I can show you how to adjust that needle. This does have an adjustable needle on it. From the factory, this needle is going to be set at 2 notches down, the second notch. And so there's I believe 5 or 6 notches. 1, and this is on the second one. 2, they are very small. So there is 5 notches total. So this one's going to be second one down. Depending on what your kind of riding conditions, performance done to the motorcycle, you can step that up or down, whatever is needed there. So we don't forget, I'm going to put this clip back in there, and then I'm going to set this aside and just set that down in there, kind of push it down until it seats completely. And like I said, there's a groove down in there that'll hold it into place. A little bit of a trick getting it down in there. And there we go. So we're going to set the slide aside now, the slide and the needle, and we're going to dismantle this carburetor and go through it here. We've got your choke, and what that's doing, it's got 2 positions, well I guess 3 positions. One up, one just about up, and then one fully choked. When you're fully choked, that butterfly is going to be completely closed. You can see there, now it's not choked, it's allowing air to flow freely through there. And so choked is completely closed. And what's happening now is when the choke is completely closed, it's shooting fuel out of these ports here, and that is all determined by your pilot jet, and I'll get to that here in a minute. But so when it's closed, it's shooting more fuel than air, and just pushing more fuel in there, which is why when you got your choke on, your motorcycle will never run good. So we've got this butterfly stopping airflow, and so you give it more and more throttle, it's going to choke itself out. Not enough air flowing through there. We're going to set that completely down. We've got our idle adjust here, and there's really no specs as far as in and out on where this should be. You do want to be running a certain RPM, about 1700 RPM at idle, plus or minus 100. And that is hard to tell on these smaller ones since they don't have a tack. So you just kind of got to play that one by ear. If it's running good, you don't want it idling too high. If it is idling too high, you'll be continuing to move when you're sitting there in gear. And that's a good way to tell if you're idling too high or not. If clutch is adjusted properly and you're idling pretty high, and your bike is moving forward, you probably need to lower your idle. Here is your air screw here, and they base that on turns out. So this one here from Honda, it's supposed to have a 1.5 turns out. So what you do when you pull the carburetor off, you check how many turns out that was. So you do 1/2 turn in, another 1/2 turn in, and another 1/2 turn in. That's 1.5 turns in. So now to put it where it needs to be, do 1.5 turns out. 1/2 turn, 1.5. Now we're going to completely dismantle it because I'm going to show you how to clean this port. So we're going to pull it out here, and just spin all the way out, knowing that you want to turn it a turn and a half from completely seated. So that is your pilot screw there with your spring on it. Next, we've got your bowl here, and we've got this bottom nipple here coming out of the bottom of the carburetor. When you've got fuel that's consistently flowing into your carburetor, it's supposed to come out this nipple here, and there's supposed to be a hose on here going beneath your motor. That's the hose there. You don't want your fuel dripping directly onto your motor. It's going to discolor your motor and potentially cause a fire. So we've got 2 Phillips screws on the bottom here. Also, if you're draining fuel for the year, or in come springtime, you've got a little bit of bad fuel in there, for whatever reason you don't need to clean your carburetor, but you need to drain your fuel, we do have this flat screw here that you need to take a couple turns out, and it'll drain your fuel through this port as well. And these screws don't need to be extremely tight. They've got a O-ring on these on this bowl that will seal this bowl up as long as the seal is good. We've got your bowl here, and this is what we got. This is an overflow tube. Now, if you've got fuel in here sloshing around, it's going to come out that small port there, and come out this bottom nipple here. So if this is for whatever reason plugged, then that fuel is going to dump directly into your motor, and that is not a good thing. You can take compressed air then and blow through it, and you should be able to feel it out this bottom nipple here. Also, you take carbon choke cleaner. I prefer this Gum Out brand, and blow through it as well, and that'll clean it up. Make sure that it's flowing properly. That's your bowl there. Next, we have your float, and this is your float, and that is going to be set at 12.7 millimeters. So when it's in the shut position, 12.7 millimeters up and down there. To remove your float, remove your needle and seat here, undo this screw, and you don't actually have to undo it all the way. You can if you want, but you can slide it out just like that, leave that screw in there. And here's your pin here that holds everything in. Here's your needle here, and there is what you call the seat. That needle comes out, you want to inspect that, make sure there's no grooving in it, make sure there's no debris down in there. When your fuel comes from your fuel tank, it'll go into this port here, run through your carburetor, and come through your seat area. So what happens a lot of times if you have a piece of sand that's small enough to where it can't get by your needle, that sand or that piece of rubber, piece of dirt is going to sit in this area, holding this open, continuing to let fuel flow through there. So you want to make sure that that's cleaned out, take compressed air, take carbon choke cleaner, spray both directions, make sure that's flowing properly. Next, we have your pilot jet, and this is where a lot of these little CRF50s don't run good. The problem is if they sit for the winter, sit for any amount of time at all, fuel gets gummed up, and then they won't start or won't run properly. That is because of this pilot jet here, they call it a slow jet. The size of this is a 35 by 35, and you will not see that written on this pilot jet. So what you do then, it's easy enough. Take a pair of side dikes or a small pair of pliers, grab a hold, but do not pinch. So you don't want to grab too hard or you will smash this jet. This is a brass jet, so it's not extremely strong, and you can smash it pretty easily. Now, you want to be able to blow through this. You're not going to be able to see through it. It's small enough to where you can't see through it. In most pilot jets you can, but on this CRF50 motorcycles, they are too small. So hold it up to your mouth, blow through it. Either direction, you want to be able to blow through it. Make sure all these small ports here are cleaned out, and you can take compressed air, blow through it, carbon choke cleaner, dump it through there, but you're not going to have a lot of fluid flowing through there or a lot of air. It's just that small of a port. So your pilot or your main jet now is this center jet, and this is where your needle runs down from your slide here. Your needle runs down directly into that main jet area. So you're going to give it gas. That's going to pull that needle up. That's going to allow more fuel to flow through here. If you have a bigger main jet, you give it gas, pull that needle's being pulled up by the throttle cable. It's allowing more fuel to flow through your main jet. Pilot jet, it's not going to make any difference when you've got full throttle. So if you're wanting to add exhaust to your motorcycle or an air filter, Next step, you'll want to make sure that you've got the right main jet in there. The other thing that'll affect that is your needle. Okay, so you can change the notches on there. Maybe you wouldn't have to change your main jet, maybe you can just change your needle. So manufacturer of an exhaust may say 1 notch down on your needle, or switch your main jet out for a different size. More than likely, if you're adding exhaust, you're gonna change both your needle and your main jet. A lot of times just changing your needle or just changing your jet isn't gonna be enough. So your main jet size right now is stock is a 58, and you will see that written. I believe this is on the bottom area, and it's very, very small. If you have any get corrosion at all on this or buildup at all on this brass jet, you won't be able to see that. So now we can take compressed air, blow through there. You want to be careful though that you don't take compressed air and blow down, or you will blow this. It's really hard to see, but where that, you can see, if you're looking at yours, you can see it better. Your brass fitting that this main jet sits, kind of goes up against when it's in there. If you're pushing down on that, well, I'll just do it for you here. That's gonna push that out. And I may need a needle to do it. There we go. So that's out there. You want to make sure that that's cleaned and make sure you can blow through it. This is a pretty good sized port. And so if your main jet's clean and you blow through it this way, then this is going to be clean as well. So we'll take compressed air. Just blow that off. And that's all set. We can stick that back up in there. And I take a small screwdriver or a pick and push it down all the way, because it does have to seat properly, and it does. If you look down through here, you can see that holder there. Now we'll take our main jet, make sure that it's cleaned out, blow through it if it needs it, carbon choke cleaner if it needs it. Again, that's a 58 main jet. So if you add exhaust, you may be like a 60 or a 62 main jet. Just check factory specs on that. So now to get this one back in, what I do is I try to actually put my side dikes in the same spot that they were before. That gives me an idea where this sits on there. And then you just take and push down on it. And make sure that it's completely seated. You want to make sure you don't damage the top of that jet though, but you want to make sure it's completely seated down there. Next, for our float, our needle, slide that needle in the groove there. Take and set it down, then we slide our pin through. And then we take our Phillips screwdriver. I want to be able to do it so you can see it, but just tighten that Phillips down. Make sure it's properly seated in that groove there. Now we've got our inspecting this O-ring really good, because a lot of times these get dried up and they end up, well, then you check your float height there. Inspect your O-ring, make sure that it's good. Then we can put our bowl back on there. Put our 2 Phillips screws in. Again, you don't have to really crank on these things. That's just making it difficult for the next guy, because a lot of times you can tighten these down like crazy, but getting these out is more difficult. All right, now we've got our pilot screw here. And then if you remember how to do this, completely seat it, turn it out a turn and a half. So completely seat it, again, you don't have to crank on it. Half, 1 and a half. Now we're in the correct position. Now our throttle cable, just the opposite. I'll stick that spring on there, and now it makes it a little bit easier. You got more room, but you can take your thumb and your finger, pull that all the way back like that, pinch it in between there, take that cable then, take it down that groove, hook it on there, then you can just let that spring go. Now take and you this slide will only go down all the way one way. You can get it a little ways if you turn it the wrong way, but you want to make sure that this smaller groove there, or the shorter, fatter groove, aligns with this idle adjustment. And then the way to adjust your idle is just to get it on the bike and start up, make sure your bike is warm, and then you can adjust your idle. Cable's on, and now we just need to hook it up to the throttle housing. That is a carb clean on a Honda 50 motorcycle, anywhere from the 03 to the 2015. They're all the same. Thanks for watching.